Okay, I think we're good. It,
Okay,
it is Daphne with Lore Entertainment. We are sitting down with Patrick Kilpatrick. How are you doing, Patrick?
I'm okay. I had a little bit of bronchitis this week that I'm getting over, but I'm getting everything done.
Was you somewhere cold?
No, I don't know whether it's grandchildren, they bring everything home from daycare or whatever, but we had a bout of pretty bad air there for a while, about a month ago, and so but it's okay. I'm all good.
I know the thing about grandchildren. I got one of them upstairs right now, and my youngest daughter is up there keeping him quiet so I can do the
That's a job to do sometimes. My grandson is pretty vocal. So
yeah.
he's about 11 months now. And
Oh,
and I've got two granddaughters that are really a delight. They're all delights. I actually love kids and I love having them, but you better have your energy in order whenever you're around them. So, but all good, all good.
yeah,
Uh,
during the day, tequila at night.
we're working on it. That sounds like a great idea. It's Saturday night. We're working on a script for a director that I've sort of assigned to a project called Flight 2222. And so he's given us some notes and we're going through all of that. And that's what we're doing this week.
Crazy busy.
Yeah, always. The thing about producing, directing, acting, writing, there's always something going on. And fundraising, of course, and all of that.
So, how long have you been directing and producing?
Well, in the early years of my career, I directed stage in New York, and I had the privilege of being an assistant director to a fabulous guy named John Tillinger. This was in the mid '80s in New York, on Broadway and off Broadway, and the West End of London and regional theater, um, and then. I did some directing of stage productions with a company called Divine Theater. The film stuff has been, uh, I'm in mid production now with an action film that I wrote and am acting in and producing with a great cast called Dying for Living, and I'm directing that. I'm really I like doing it. I mean, there's probably on Dying for Living, there's probably four guys who could direct the movie right there. The cinematographer, Stefan Olsen, clearly, I can see you're going to hear about him directing in the days ahead. Jacob Bressler, who's the line producer, has assisted directed and directed many low budget films that I've acted in. So he could step in at any time. Raffaello, my producing partner, has directed many times things. And Art Camacho, the choreographer, is a working director as well. So I'm in good stead. I really, on this one, just have to step in and some acting values and that kind of thing. It's pretty easy. Those guys know how to rip along, and I can just sort of allow it to happen. Um, so I've been screenwriting and directing for maybe 10 years now, on and off.
It's always good when you have somebody who's on your team that's versatile. That's what I like, and that's what I've been doing for the Shattered Dreams movie. I've got Michael Givens is the cinematographer. He's a legend, and then I've got Christina or Triagoff. I can never pronounce the last name, and she's directing. But Chuck Borden's on board. He knows how to direct. I've got Sud. He can do it too. So it's always good because you never know if something happens. You got
Oh
somebody
yeah.
to step in. It's
Well, the productions are so rigorous, and the time involved is so compressed, as you say, um, that I mean, there are a couple of times I literally had to fall asleep with Dying for Living, but I could know that Art and Stefan were going to be able to cover a couple of scenes and get it done. And yeah, or perhaps you're in a car and there's not enough room for the director and the cinematographer and the driver and the cast, so you can let them wing it. But yeah, this team is crazy. They're crazy talented. I'm very blessed, and the project is really turning out really, really well. So we're starting our Kickstarter campaign for the finishing funds for that one on August 26th. So I've been recording a lot of videos for that with the cast to launch all of that, because we've got some money that we've still got to raise to finish it and get it across the finish line.
Yeah, that's what a lot of people don't understand about this business, and I try to make this clear to people because they think once they put a script in a producer's hands that it's going to be shot in like a month. And that is nowhere near the time limit that we need to be able to do what we do, because you've got it's going to at least take a couple years, 2 3 years, but it's astounding, that these people think that stuff just happens overnight. And that's what I try to explain to people. Like The Wolf of Wall Street, that movie took 11 to 12 years. The first Avatar movie, I believe it was 12 to 13 years.
Hmm.
I'm sure Cameron's been working on the other Avatar probably since he stopped the first one came out. And it's not an overnight process. It's a long drawn out process. And the people like us, the producers and people that are handling writing and everything else, we get a headache, because we're doing this every single day where people can take days off. We cannot, you know.
Yeah, it's a soul killing process if you allow it to be, and sometimes you just have to step away from it and have a good sense of humor about the whole thing. But you're absolutely correct. So many people come to me and they've finished a script, and that's a significant milestone, and that's a powerful place to be. But I operate in a world where people don't even read scripts unless they want to. So we create strategic visual presentation materials that make people want to read the project. Um, you have to put together all of the numbers, all the casting that's involved, and lining up the financing, and that takes a long time. And even working 7 days a week at it, it takes a lot. Um, I've auditioned. My favorite thing is I've auditioned for films that were written for Paul Newman like 40 years ago. These things are just sort of, it's like, wow, this feels like it got a 60s feel. Well, yeah, it was written for Paul Newman and Robert Redford or something like that, and still hasn't gotten done. So there's no guarantees.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this business, it's a crazy, crazy business, and people they get to see the people who aren't involved in this industry. They see finished project. They don't see everything else that
No, 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 that they they don't need to, but I think it's maybe not a rude awakening, but when people approach me, and it happens every week with doing a project, um, you have to sort of gently illuminate them to the realities of this has to take its place within perhaps a slate of films. This has to take its place in all the strategic materials. Even if the script is the greatest thing since sliced bread, which it is never the greatest thing since sliced bread. It has to be polished and worked on, and things have to be brought along. And so much is dependent not just on the script, but on who's attached to do it, who's attached as a director, who's attached in the key slots in the acting realm for distribution value and bankability. So there's a lot to consider. And all of that takes time, and everybody's got busy schedules. So, but we move along pretty swiftly.
So what do you prefer? I mean, you said you were doing theater or directing. What do you prefer? The film industry or theater?
Well, my life since the mid 80s up till about 87 has been film and television. I um, that's where the majority of my work went. Do I feel capable to go step into a stage situation? Sure, I do. And a good story can be translated to any medium. I have projects that are set up for either a streaming series or a large expansive film, and they would very easily make Broadway shows. It's just applying creativity to do that, and assembling the financing and the team for that. I prefer, I prefer a creative enterprise that comes together in such a way that the universe is smiling upon this as it's moving along. You're going to have challenges, but I mean, I'd do a Broadway show tomorrow if the funding was lined up for it, but that's not happening. I'm working in this film and TV space. It's all a show. It's show business to me. It's all creativity. I like acting as much as I like writing. I like directing as much as I like producing. I think I'll probably not write, produce, direct, and act too often because that's maybe a bridge too far. Right now, I'm attaching other, you know, uh, financing entities like to see a director attached to a project who's done something in that economic space. If it's $11 million, they want to see somebody who's done an $11 million film. So I'm old enough and matured enough and not attached to the ego of directing so much that I'm happy to have another director come in and work on something, as long as it's a collaborative situation where you're inputting on the aspect. I'm not telling people how to do a film. I'm just saying, maybe we ought to take a look at this aspect and this. I mean, I think by the time you start, you're all on the same page anyway on a lot of levels. But um, at least so far, I don't think I'd hire a director unless we were on similar creative footing.
Yeah. On the same level?
Well, maybe not on the same level, but understanding what we're trying to accomplish with the film or the TV series. So that said, these people are really gifted. So uh, it's a collaboration. That's what people really. It's not a dictatorial situation. Well, least of all for me. Everything we do improves by collaboration. It's not the uber auteur telling everybody else what to do. So sometimes that situation works, but uh, I mean, like I'm doing Flight 2222 with Darren Sarafian. I'm not going to tell Darren how to direct a movie. He's been the chief executive producer and writer and director of House. I've done work as an actor for him on Death Warrant. He worked on Lost, so he knows what he's doing as far as a director. My job then becomes as a producer to make sure that he has the resources that he needs to get the film done and it's scheduled properly and it's all done well.
I miss that show, House. I used to
Yeah.
all the time. I miss that show. I wish that they wouldn't have taken that off. It
Well,
was
it's when you really great one that ends. What are they? I think they have a word for that. It's called show withdrawal or something when it ends at the, like that's how I felt about Narcos, and things like that. Although they're a great delight to go back. There's something really wonderful to go back and watch a show. And I often do that because I'm studying how they're doing certain things. I think I probably watched Saving Private Ryan 30 times, scene by scene by scene, and to see how they executed things, and in some cases where the flaws were and where the holes are.
I do the same thing. I watch these specific shows, and I've been watching actually a couple different shows now to see the actors because there's parts that haven't, been cast. And I have this habit, like one of the shows I watch all the time, and I'm addicted to that show, is Mike and Molly. I love that show. And
I don't know it. I'll watch it.
you've never seen Mike and Molly with Melissa McCarthy?
I think I've seen a couple of episodes, but it's been a long time. Worth revisiting for me. I love her. She's a great improver, and I think that's fantastic. The outtakes on "This Is 40" with her are fantastic. In fact, they built them into the film. After the credit sequences, they run uh, blooper reels. They're not bloopers, really. It's just amazing to watch her cut loose.
Yeah.
Um, as a great improver myself, I really appreciate her for what she's doing.
I think my favorite one was the movie The Heat with her and Sandra Bullock, where she goes in and completely goes off on the captain about him and saying, here's the captain's balls if you see him, and she throws the thing right at his head, and I'm dying when I watch that movie because I really want to work with her. I like her. I think she's friggin' hilarious. I think it'd be a good time you know but stuff like that improv you can get away with certain shows and movies and stuff like that, but like you were saying about stage, about being able to go and do that like that, those what people don't realize is I feel for them because they don't get a retake when they're performing for people. They don't get retakes. You can't do that in the middle of a show with a whole theater filled with people, you know? It's impossible.
No, um, but great Broadway performances are often enhanced by how do you recover from the mistakes. Particularly if the audience knows it, you can really captivate their hearts by them seeing an adept way of recovering from something that's happened. I did a play once where I don't know how it happened, but we skipped about two-thirds of the play. Somehow dialogue got twisted up and it went from one place to another. So like a 50-minute or an hour play ended up being 15 minutes. And after that was over, the audience members came up to me and said, "That was really, really good. It was so short, though. We wished it had been longer, but that's probably the only time that's ever happened." But yeah, I mean, you in film, you could just stop and start and redo another take and things like that. But when I do theater, I go to the theater 3 hours before and I'm going through every single line. So I know it pretty well. I know. At the same time, then the challenge becomes how do I live in the moment and how do I let it flow organically from one moment to the next? So, which is what acting is. That's what acting is all about.
Yeah. When I'm doing the acting jobs that I take, and I still take some, I take them basically just to get the hell out of the house. But I mean, in between those scenes, if I know I have something coming, I'm going to sit there and read and read and read and make sure that I know where to go. Where there are some actors like that who don't do that, and then some just don't have to. Like Anthony Hopkins, I know that my coach, and I still have, my coaches, but my coach, they told me that Anthony Hopkins, I guess he reads a script, it's like 130 times before he even goes on to a project. And that's a lot. That's a lot of reading over and over and over. And I mean, I don't like to mess up. I don't want to mess up, when I'm doing it. I don't at all.
Well, fortunately, I don't think that's necessary for me. When I first started out, if you're just talking about the memorization, it was like digging in the trenches. But in short order, I really discovered I had kind of a photographic memory. So I can literally learn a scene and break it down and do it all. And I think that comes from the crucible of auditioning. I can break it down, memorize it, and come back with a definitive character in about 20 minutes. And that just comes from doing it more and more and more and more. It all depends the world you're used to. I used to listen to Daniel Day-Lewis, and he would talk about working on an accent for 8 months. And I thought, well, God, that's not my world. My world is you go in and you have to be a Russian, and you become a Russian. You watch how do I speak like a Russian on the internet, and you develop the accent. Maybe you work with a vocal coach after you've booked the job to polish it. But if the audition says cry, you cry. If the audition says Russian maniac, then you're a Russian maniac. So uh, you get attuned. Look, if you work on a daily newspaper, you're going to be used to cranking out copy. If you're and hopefully electric copy. If you're working in television, you're going to have very, very compressed excellence. If you're doing a movie once every 8 months, that's what you get used to.
Yeah.
So, um, you know, race car drivers go 220 miles an hour. You get used to it.
Not just race car drivers.
Well, the street, yeah, unfortunately, we live in a time where there's a lot of people driving race carring on the street, which I guess was always going on since the 50s and maybe even the 30s. So,
So,
um,
do you have like any tips for the aspiring actors out there as far as training or to make their lives a little bit easier when it comes to auditioning? What would be your advice or a tip?
well, there's so much, and I've taught in classes at length, but every aspect is important. But let's see, broad strokes, the worst thing the hardest thing for a lot of young actors and young writers and young directors and producers is that they really don't know where excellence lies, either in a school or, but the truth is, it's in front of you all the time. If you look at masters, I call it communing with masters, and watch how Steven Spielberg does stuff, or how Michael Mann does stuff, or how uh, great directors of the past, John Ford, how did they do things? And how did they light scenes? How did they transition from one scene to another? The same is true of any endeavor. That doesn't cost you a lot. You'd watch masterful things. If you're a novelist, of course, you read Fitzgerald and Hemingway and Flaubert and Voltaire and people like that, and Hunter Thompson, Ken Kesey, all the people. You study how did the masters do things, and then that'll give you a leg towards finding your own voice. And then keep yourself attuned to whatever the universe is doing in that realm. I mean, I'm constantly watching things, constantly studying how people are doing other things. And after a while, you'll develop a storytelling thing, which applies to all these disciplines: acting, writing, directing, producing, that allows you to intuitively know which way to go. Um, a lot of people come to Hollywood or acting and these disciplines without really understanding excellence where it is. And so you can save a lot of time by finding where excellence lies. Watch people who were brilliant at what they were doing. If you're going to go to schools, that's another topic. There's A-list schools and there's less good schools, and yeah, there's every person is different because people are a certain age, they're a certain economic, uh, they've got certain economic resources. Uh, the advice I would give to an actor who's 17 is very different than the advice I would give to somebody who's 32. There's a lot. I mean, it takes time. You can do a lot of things swiftly. As far as auditioning, you need to make auditioning masterful because that's the key to getting work. Um, I don't do it too much anymore because mostly I get offered work, and I'm running a film company and script writing and things like that. And the crucible of auditioning takes time. Uh, um, but there are ways to show people. There are techniques. I can do it pretty quickly and to show people how to do it. If anybody was interested, they should just contact me and I'll try to set them up with a methodology. It really only takes about 6 months or maybe a year, depending on how you apply yourself, to be able to really accelerate your life if you're going to the sources of excellence in what you're doing and you're applying drive and creativity to what you're doing. Um, so everybody, look, I had coaches, I had mentors when I started out. Everybody needs that. Everybody needs to be guided towards things. I mentioned his name before, John Killinger, who became a great Broadway director, but he could say, check out this school or try the Juilliard acting company or that kind of thing. Or so that's what you need.
I agree. I mean, as far as training, yeah, I believe in the training. It's also people don't even realize they get a lot of training from watching, the movies, or even if they have to watch it just a couple of times just to get a feel for it, because some people they're not good with reading on paper all the time, or and they'll sit there and figure out, well, how I can't connect with this character. Well, if you watch something, yeah, that's similar, there you go. Or even if it's happened to you in your own life, use it. It's going to put you where you need to be. But then they always want to second guess themselves, and usually when you're second guessing yourself is where you go wrong, I think.
And if you don't cover all the steps, the way I do it, and it's different for a lot of people, but there are certain steps you take with material to understand how to achieve what you're doing. And if you take those steps and you work them, you're gonna get it. Um, and then you have to sort of like the metaphor we use is you fling those cards up in the air and you operate from the moment. But all that back work that you've done enriches what you're coming out with. People aren't specific and personal enough about their preparation for audition, and that's where they would fail. Um, so there are little techniques. There are techniques about memorizing lines. There are techniques about making things personal and specific, both in subtext and in the landscape of objects and places and things that are in a particular scene. This is all very great stuff for a director to know. It's your show being called the Director's Corner. It's vital that actors know about directing and producing and writing. It's vital that directors know about acting and writing and producing. It's vital for a producer to know all of those things as well. So it's really a four disciplined endeavor to create yourself as a storyteller.
I agree. I definitely agree. So after you finish up this film, do you got any others lined up that you're going to be doing?
Yeah, well, like most producers and creative people, you're never just working on one project. So we've got a whole slate of really great films. One is with Network, and we're set to turn that into a 10-episode series. We have this other film I'm working, Flight 2222, with Darren Sarafian. Uh, you go out, it's kind of like being a journalist, which I was in the beginning. You have ideas, a slate, and you go out and you meet development executives at a studio or a streaming service or high net worth individual. They don't respond to every one. They'll respond to one. So you end up focusing on that one with them. But you're dealing with many different entities. We have about 6, 7 projects that are all in um, various stages of coming to production. Everything from mid production and nearly finished to they're all pretty, a lot of heavy lifting has been done. They're all in advanced development. And casting is another big thing. I have like 5 casting people working with me, providing us with lists just so we can have conversations with financial entities and development and production executives who would be potentially in the movie. Then you've got the whole negotiating process with all talent and all of that. So,
Let me ask you a question as far as casting. And I don't know if this happens to you, but this happens to me all the time. And it's annoying. What are your thoughts and your opinions as far as people submitting to you for roles on Facebook or anywhere else that is not
yeah,
the right?
I take it from anywhere. I've been cast in full films just by people calling me on social media, and that's perfectly legitimate for me. Um, uh, I talk to 1 or 2 or 3 people a week who have contacted me through social media, whether it's to talk about consulting on a project or raising money on a project. And I have to square them away that this is how we are doing things. I don't have any adverse effect with people contacting me via social media. Um, you have to go out in every direction if you're going to launch a career and maintain it. So certainly, I don't think there's anything. I think A-list talent and the upper reaches of that are not going to respond to that too much because they have a mechanism that's set up with agents and things like that. And unless you have a personal relationship with you, which is what you always want to do, um, you're probably not going to meet with success in uh, attaching them to their project without going through the agent. Agents don't like being circumvented either. And so that's something you have to be wary of doing.
Yeah, I mean, it it didn't bother me in the beginning when people were submitting because I would go through, what they were sending their materials and stuff like that. And if I felt like that they fit, then we'll talk. But when it was becoming a habit and I'm talking 20 people, you know, in a day, if not more, just hitting me up through a messenger. And me personally, for the movie that we're working on, I've been doing so much on my own, and I've brought in more people now, to where I'm just at the point where I can't do the casting anymore. It's gonna have to fall on somebody else because I'm doing so much, and there's only so much one person can do. Same as, you people will approach you on social media, but there's a time where you have to hand it out, and they just have to deal with those people directly. It's
Oh,
too.
well, casting directors are fantastic because you're right. You have to delegate to other people. Um, I mean, my wife is very adept at casting, um, but she can only supplement what a great casting person can bring to widen the universe that you're dealing with. So I take it for everything. We get much more composers and musical people coming through social media than any other form. And I'm grateful for it because they're incredibly talented, these people. So we just file it. And when we are at a step where we're trying to put a score together or something like that, then we pull them out. And I respond and I say, you're clearly very talented. We're not at that point just right yet. Or in the case of I'll turn this person over to the casting person so they'll go on the list so that we can get back to them when the point in time is perfect for that, addressing that issue.
Yeah, I do the same thing. I'll put them in a file, future projects or, possibles or music scoring. I have the different files. So when they're sending it to me, they probably think I forgot about them, but I didn't. They're just in a folder, for when we get to that point because I can't say yes right away because you never know what's going to happen, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I think people finding work is a very noble thing. And so I try to do what I can to facilitate that. I think helping people to find work is one of the great benefits of actually having a team. There's nothing I like better than being able to provide people with jobs um, to do creative work that they can sustain their families and things like that with it. That said, you have to do it within the constraints of your budget and bringing passionate people together. If anybody really saw how movies and films, how cataclysmically fast they were cast, they'd have a greater understanding of this. If the money drops from a project, you're often writing, uh, casting, producing, getting locations, accommodations, everything else. And yes, you have a team, but you're doing that all very, very quickly. And then sometimes people who are perfect for things go right over your head and you're good buddies with them. But things are happening so swiftly once that money drops that you go, oh my God, how could I have forgotten that person? But that's how it happens.
I agree. I definitely agree with you on that one because
You try
I
to
go ahead.
just try to minimize that so that get
Oh,
the right person. That's the central thing for all these activities, whether you're a director or producer, get the right people to assemble around the project so that they can do their job brilliantly, whether it's wardrobe or makeup or hair or glam. I call it glam team, locations, props. Get really good people so that you're not going to have any more issues than you need to have.
yeah, because I mean, it's overwhelming sometimes, especially until you get your team into where they need to be. It does get overwhelming, you know.
Well, the biggest challenge, in my career, in the last couple of decades, production schedules have become so compressed that I think, to some extent, which is one reason why we're looking for money to finish Dying for Living, is because it was impossible to finish 11 pages a day and still get quality to what you're doing. Maybe you're going to get five or six. And that's hustling. That's heroically hustling. So, but that's what you're fighting against all the time. So there's really no space for drama or difficulty or anything like that there. There's just, you've got to hustle along. Um, and me personally, I am quality of the endeavor is the most vital thing for me. What's the point in doing it if you're going to end up with a piece of schlock or something that's is not as high as you can get it? So many people at the end of a production, you're talking, oh, well, if I had had more money, oh, if I'd had more time. Well, that's valid, but it's not something you want to really fall back on too much. You want to be able to deliver the goods. So,
And to make it, basically to get it to perfection, it does take time because you don't want to screw up. You don't want to screw up the first. You don't. You're losing money, you're losing time. So just take your time and make the product. So, you don't look, goofy. I'm trying to figure out a word to say this that won't make people mad, but just it takes
well, I think anybody realizes how many decisions go into a particular day in production. Um, Literally, you're talking maybe 40 or 50 decisions sometimes in the first 5 or 10 minutes of the day. And if you're jumping around, I mean, because rarely are films filmed in sequence now. They don't start at the beginning and go to the end. You're jumping around. Is the fire trucks, are they coming in? If it rains, happen, what do we do here? And oh, this one has COVID today, and that one has to go to Seattle be in another film, and that kind of thing. So you're really, production is really jumping around a lot. So
Yep, and then we get to sit there and keep track of every single piece that's already been done. So we make sure we're not missing anything when it's time to put it into post production. It
yeah,
is
you have that in your head as you're going along.
yeah. So
Here's the overriding thing though, and this is what I've learned. Whatever happens is for the good. You know, one actor getting COVID sounds cataclysmic, but it's going to end up being for the good of the project, because you're going to make an adjustment. There's no sense in getting crazy about it, because, okay, it's like fighting a war. Okay, this is what we have to do, and this is what we have to do. And you make the adjustment. And there's a great sort of Zen like peace that happens after that when you realize that this is going to be madness. So we're going to need to really just catch our breath and move on in that way. And it's going to end up resulting in a better film.
so I ask everybody this. Do you have a personal motto that you live your life by? Or quote, should I say?
Well, at this point, it's not worth it getting angry about. Nothing is worth. Um, and rarely are things helped by you getting angry about something. Now that's hard to do. I'll give you an example. Yeah, where I live, we've been slowly beautifying the gardens. It makes me feel good. The flowers are really nice, and it's beautifying where I live. Well, we photographed the pool guy rinsing the filters from the pool in the shrubbery and the flowers. Of course, we've been wondering why everything was dying. So I was pretty angry about it, because it comes at the end of a long line of the owners of where I live not doing their part to preserve and to have do their part to preserve a landmark building. So, but it's not worth getting angry about. It's something that you've got to deal with from security and strength rather than anger. Um, and sometimes in no uncertain terms, letting somebody know they shouldn't be doing that. But the key is success, not venting of vitriol. Um,
Yeah.
be cool. There's an expression in real estate that realtors have saying houses don't bleed. Well, movies don't bleed either. You know, it's life and death, but it's not something that you need to. Uh, the fact that a ball cap is missing from somebody's costume, and you have to pick your battles too.
Yeah, sometimes I mean, I try not to be one of them people who vent, but when I have to vent, I have just it's probably like 3 or 4 different people that I just call. That way there I can just let it out and move on. If not, you'll go crazy if you don't.
Right. Uh, Sometimes it's better to get a massage and to move on and have a nice meal and come back at a walk on the beach or something. Um,
Definitely. All right. Well, I guess we're going to wrap this up and we're
okay.
tell everybody thank you for watching and thank you, Patrick, for coming on. It's been a
Uh,
great time, seriously.
you have a great day and back to work on flight 2222.
Yeah. Bye, Patrick.
Bye. Have a great
I remember all those nights when I'd sing you to sleep, and the memory of your beautiful face, so sweet. My darling, won't you tell me you'll stay forevermore? And baby, all your cutest kisses I adore. Don't you miss feeling alive? All those nights where we laughed till we cried. Do you remember when we talked on the phone that first night and gazed upon the moon, blowing kisses to the sky? Darling, all our lives we've been lost and so alone. But baby, in your arms I finally found my home. And I've never felt so alive. Meeting you brought my heart back to life. In a world so cold and so tired, your puppet eyes set my soul on fire. On that night when I first gave my heart to yours, I was scared and feeling insecure. You told me, my darling, even on your darkest days, you'd always reassure.